Welcome back to this week's edition of Freedom and Prosperity Radio, the weekly radio news magazine that we put together here at the Virginia Institute for Public Policy. I've seen some staggering numbers of gun sales since the COVID-19 pandemic began, and then even more so as the strikes and the rioting has started to begin across Virginia. Reminder, last time we saw huge crowds in Richmond, between 20 and 50, depending on your estimates, of peaceful protesters. Want to see what a peaceful protest looks like? Look for video, search VCDL Lobby Day rally in Richmond. You even see video of participants walking back to their cars, picking up pieces of paper off the street and throwing them in the trash can. So there we begin today's Freedom and Prosperity Radio with the president of the Virginia Citizens Defense League, Philip Van Cleave. 80% increase in gun sales since last year, Philip. I guess it's good. We'll qualify that. How are you doing this weekend?
Yeah, it's been crazy. It's we're all seeing the same thing everybody else is, all the nuttiness out there. And more and more Americans are finally waking up from a sound sleep, going, I might have to protect myself. The police may not be there when I dial 911. Well, that's always been the case.
Mm-hmm.
But some people are just now waking up to the reality when they're hearing about police forces being disbanded
Mm-hmm.
and the violence and everything out there. So I think it's good that people are waking up to their rights. It's too bad they're kind of late to the party here, but better late than never, I guess.
Yeah. What did Bruce Willis say in Die Hard? Welcome to the party, pal. But and with July 1st looming on Wednesday, that I know that there are folks who are saying, well, hold it. What do you mean? What's going to happen? We just watched Alexandria get its New York City on, and I guess empowered by the lack of action of the Supreme Court banning guns in public places. One can only imagine that this is going to be cut and pasted to a lot of municipalities across the Commonwealth. Philip, what do you hear?
Well, right now there's about 4 or 5 that we're watching, and I expect there is going to be more. But what we've done is for every locality in Virginia, we've got at least one, if not multiple people assigned to be watching local government for any kind of a move on gun rights, be it good or be it bad, and to notify us immediately so that we can organize and get people active to fight back against gun control or to fight for good things that maybe a locality is doing. But we're now watching like a hawk, where before we kind of informally kind of expected members to tell us. Now we've actually got people assigned to it, and it's an organized effort. We're getting ready to move into a new phase where we're going to be pushing for local governments to do a resolution that says they aren't going to pass any more gun control. We've already got, most of the state was painted green with the color standing for Second Amendment sanctuaries. Well, now we're going to go back to them and say, we would like you to pass this resolution just to confirm that, you're not going to be doing any more gun control. You're not going to become another Alexandria driven by tyrants. I mean, that was it just reminded me that some people have no business being in government. They just don't have the morality. They don't have the mentality. They don't really understand that this is not about them. This is about the people.
Yeah, I think your point about it's not really about them. I think there are an awful lot of folks who hold elected office who look upon some of the let's just not say the historic figures that had statues built to them, but the ones who are held up high in their political parties and say, I could be bigger than him someday. And they try to, be the big man on campus, as it were. Now, let me ask you, though, electorally, 2021 is going to have the House of Delegates up for election. Certainly the executive branch will be contested as well, Philip. But I've talked to gun shop owners who have told me, without statistics but by testimony, many of the guns that they're selling, and the reports vary, 75 to 81% increase in gun sales. I had one gun shop owner say he's up 4 times over last year. So that's just one shop, though. that many of these new firearms purchasers confide, I never would have thought I'd be the person in here buying a gun. I never wanted to own a gun. I didn't think I was that kind of person. And I can only believe that those folks had certain political affiliations that would go along with that mindset. Have the members of that Democratic Party that seem so eager to enact gun control laws done themselves perhaps some political trouble coming next year? And I'm not asking you to weigh in on the politics of it, but perhaps maybe they're like a Chap Peterson or other folks who are members of that political wing of the Virginia government start saying, I don't know if I necessarily want to be so hardcore against firearm ownership anymore.
Yeah, I think so. Look, Democrats have historically been gun owners, a lot of them, but I think they really haven't been holding. Their party's been taken over. Is basically what's happened. It's not the same Democrat Party that we had 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And I think some of them, you're going to end up in a mode where some of them are going to go, I didn't leave the Democrat Party. They left me. That's what Reagan said back in the 80s. I can only imagine what he would think if he saw what's happened with the gun control issue. Why is one party saying we want to take away a civil right? The Democrats. Why are they saying that? Why would they do that? It's a basic civil right, and I think a lot of people are going to have to vote their safety first. Over everything else. They're just going to have to do it, because if you can't protect your family, nothing else matters. What else matters if you're laying dead? So I don't know. I think the anti-gun Democrat leadership has gotten power drunk, just like Alexandria. Power drunk. They admitted in Alexandria. The city council said right during the meeting, "Oh, we finally have a chance to do something we've wanted to do for years." And then one of them said, well, maybe we don't have to do all of this. We could not. But in the end, they all voted unanimously to do all of it. That power drunk, I think, is going to hurt them eventually. It's going to catch up.
Well, I don't think it may happen faster than you think, especially in light of the protest riots in Richmond and Roanoke and other places across the country, where the subtext is becoming harder and harder to obscure. That it's really much more of an assault on property ownership. The idea of private property being anathema to many of the organizers of these Occupy movements and protests. I think there are Democrats and Republicans alike saying, I need to protect my store, my car, my home, my family.
Yeah, it was somebody, one of the mayors up in Washington State. They're all for these protests until they got to her house and defaced it and damaged it badly. Then suddenly she decided that maybe these violent protests weren't so good after all.
It's sad.
And I think
history repeats itself that way. Philip Van Cleave is the president of the Virginia Citizens Defense League. Philip, I want to circle you. You guys are pushing back against the governor's one handgun a month law, or the General Assembly and the governor. Both were, and it's going to go into effect July 1. Catch us up on this, because I think a lot of folks, understand that constitutionally, legislators are expected to, at some points, write unconstitutional laws out of rampant populism, and then you fight them in court, see Jim Crow, and those courts then say, no, this is patently unconstitutional, and they go away. But a lot of my listeners don't have faith that the Supreme Court will do that anymore, but maybe some of the lower courts will. Philip, where do we stand with that?
Well, I think we're going through the Virginia courts. So this will go to the Virginia Supreme Court ultimately. Look, we don't ration any other right. We don't say, well, look, you can only go to church once a week. You can't go twice a week. Sorry, Baptist, can't do it. We don't do that. We don't say, well, you can only get one newspaper and you can only read it every other day. We don't do any of that. But with guns, that's what we've done. We're rationing, saying, well, you can only have just so many, and it's all arbitrary. And by the way, they're making the one gun a month retroactive to June. Now, what that means is if you buy a handgun in June, right now you can buy multiple in June.
Mm-hmm.
But if you buy one in June, you will not be able to buy one in July until 30 days have passed from the June date that you bought it. So if you bought it on June 15th, 30 days later in July, then you could buy another gun. So it's retroactive. So if you just bought a gun, you want to buy another one, you may want to do it before July 1st rolls around.
But these rules, and I've looked, Virginia Beach, Smith Mountain Lake, these Virginia shooting incidents, none of these would have been held off. None of them would have been stopped by a one handgun a month law. So is this pure window dressing, Philip?
Gun control is all the way across the board. You'd be hard-pressed to give me any gun control that would have made any difference in any of this. How about if we have a law that says you cannot have crack cocaine anywhere in the United States? Nobody's allowed, never can do it. Oh, yeah, we have one of those.
Yeah.
Yet we have a big problem with crack cocaine. So how can any gun law stop a determined criminal? All it'll do is disarm you and me, and we aren't the problem. If you take away my guns, I've committed 0 crimes in my life. If you take away my guns, how will that make the crime rate go down? It won't, because I'm not part of the crime problem.
Mm-hmm.
But they keep doing that. They keep disarming the good people and saying, look, crime is still here. We got to do something. Of course it's still here, because you're not doing anything that's going to change that. It's just their excuse. Look, the goal is to disarm us. Let's not mince words here. Forget, this isn't about crime. This isn't about anything else other than ultimately you cannot be a socialist communist government with an armed populace. It won't work, because the populace will never put up with what's coming if they get control.
Well, but look at what's going on in Minneapolis with 11 shootings in one weekend. There are now multiple shooting homicides in the CHOP, this Occupy zone of Seattle, where apparently the members of Antifa can have long rifles. I presume they're all NRA members because they're walking the perimeter. But now we've had shootings there, and police weren't even allowed to get in to help the people who were victims of this shooting. A young boy was killed on Father's Day in Chicago in a drive-by shooting. These are not VCDL members. These are the criminal element. And I worry that, especially in places like Minneapolis, which has long been a stronghold of people like Ilhan Omar and the Attorney General, whose name Ellison, and their representation has been left and then further left. That now they're going to dismantle the police department on top of already having disarmed many of their citizens.
Yeah, you've got to see where the end result of this is. These aren't disparate things that are happening. These things are all moving in a general direction. It's kind of like following a flow chart. Okay, so here, how do we disarm the population? Well, we do this, we do that. We don't even want armed police because we can't trust them not to stand up to an attack on changing us to a communist country. It's all one step after the other. Mm-hmm. So we're headed down a bad path. That's all I can tell you. And everybody I talk to are all shaking their heads at the world turned upside down recently. Well, it's been coming for a while, but it's now on steroids.
So where does the suit stand with the VCDL and the Gun Owners of America pushing back on the one handgun a month law? Can you get a stay of it? Can you get an injunction stopping it from going into effect? Is the die cast on that? And what court steps are you going to be going through?
I believe it's the 25th or the 26th of June we're having a hearing. Yeah, we're going for a stay. In other words, they aren't going to decide right then and there if the law is unconstitutional. The judge is merely going to look at it and say, there's enough here to say that it could well be unconstitutional. So for now, I'm going to put a stay on the law going into effect. That's what we're trying to get. Mm-hmm. And then that, would be appealed, I'm sure. And so we have a battle. But these kind of things are expedited in the courts because this is affecting trying to stop something before it goes on too far, while we wait patiently to actually have the full case heard.
I still think we suffer in this country over a shortage of courtroom space so that our rights can be defended. There, Philip. But what do you expect to happen? I mean, give us a feel for the courtroom. Do you have any idea if you're going to have some kind ears on the bench? I know this is the Virginia courts, but I guess at some point you would even wind up having to appeal beyond them.
Well, I guess it's always possible. Sure. Well, the Fourth Circuit federal court is not the best for civil rights, but and the Supreme Court in its current configuration, has been punting. I don't know, but we'll see where it all goes. But we've got that lawsuit lined up. We're going to be announcing another one here in a few days.
Okay.
It could be as early as today, but I'm not sure yet. I'm not going to pre-announce. We got another lawsuit aimed at another gun law.
Well, I know
I expect there'll be more.
The idea that this is, legislating from the bench is something that the left likes to do. That way, no elected official has to be attached to things like, abortion, because there are no legislative, at least federally legislated abortion laws. There's only rulings in courtrooms. And it seems like they're going the same route with gun laws. At least this General Assembly passed some so you can fight specifically unconstitutional law. But do you expect them to really take the same tack they've taken with abortion rights and do the same thing in the gun world and start, as in the case of the gentleman in New Jersey who was told by a judge that the judge didn't see why he needed to have a firearm. I don't see that anywhere unless there's a codicil to the Constitution that thou shalt have your right to need something have to be made clear to a magistrate. But we're inventing this stuff as we go along, Philip.
Absolutely, and that's been moved to the courts. In fact, they hadn't had a lot of success, and even legislatively, the gun controllers haven't had much success federally. So they've been moving their fight to each state by state, and that's why Virginia got particularly dragged into this last. The last elections were strongly influenced by billionaires from out of state, Michael Bloomberg and Soros,
who have private security, by the way. Who have private security guards, by the way.
Oh, of course. Their lives are more valuable than ours. See, in their world, not everybody's equal.
Yeah, true.
And certainly they're at the top of the heap. Because they could have a threat, they get armed security guards. That's how Bloomberg justified. Oh, yeah, I get threats. As if nobody else gets threats. But it gets old. I think the American people are very tired of double standards. This country was founded about the idea that we're equal, that nobody is above the law. But that's not what a lot of these people in power are actually living. They think they're above the law. They can do stuff that we can't. And that's the system of government that sometimes people tend to drift towards authoritarian. People getting control that shouldn't be in government. Like if you again look at Alexandria, a classic example of people who shouldn't be in government, and then the drift is towards more and more power, over and over and over. And us being armed is not fitting in well with that drift towards them wanting more power. All I can say is I'm damn glad to be a gun owner right now.
Philip, I know that you don't weigh in on races per se. You always do interview candidates, and you have a questionnaire that candidates fill out. And I'm not asking you to do it, but do you think that this is going to be... Because to me, gun ownership is a civil right, and we're watching people saying, I don't have my civil rights, and we're watching these protests, and I'm reminded that, nobody's protested the statue of Harry Byrd out in front of the Virginia Capitol, and he had some of the, gun confiscation laws, and they didn't want the black community to be able to arm themselves or protect what little property they did have.
Oh yeah. And even this, the things that are going on are so blown out of proportion. It's everything seems to be multiple levels of again, some being more equal than others. It's a very odd time in history. But it's I don't know where it's all headed. But like I said, those people that are gun owners are probably glad that they are, just because we don't know where this is headed. But I've never seen anything like it, and it's all dangerous. I mean, every morning you wake up, it's something new.
But is it going to filter down to the county and city levels? Do you expect? I mean, we put a couple of conservative people on the Radford Town Council this past May. So, maybe, some of these things like Alexandria, some people say, oh, that may be too much. We've gone a bridge too far. And see some Second Amendment supporters, whether they be Democrats or Republicans, win some seats over and maybe roll this back, you think, maybe in 2021?
Yeah. Well, certainly, yes. I mean, the point is a couple things. Number one, local government now has the power to pass gun control. So the people you have in local government, you really need to look at them hard.
Truth.
And if they're not going to protect your rights, then either you run against them. Nothing else. You run against them. Put your hat in the ring. Let's get these people out of there. Make sure they always have an opponent.
Mm-hmm.
But the Democrats have a very tenuous hold on the House. They have a 5-vote majority out of 100, and they have a 1-vote majority in the Senate. It's not like they've got a strong position. They're hanging on by their fingernails, and they have made every gun owner in Virginia angry. I mean, we had 105,000 people turned out across the state for all these Second Amendment sanctuaries. Lobby day was massive. They're hanging on by a thread, really. So if that gets turned around, our first agenda is going to be to undo all this stuff, especially the thing that gives local government power to do things. We need to undo that law, just take it off the books and put us back where we were. That'll be a priority.
VCDL.org. If nothing else, at least these riots across Virginia have stopped people from saying how frightening the VCDL lobby day was, because they sounded kind of silly in light of some of the violent protests, looting, and property damage that's been taking place over the last few weeks. So
don't you think it's odd that for us, who had never had any violence ever at any of our rallies, the governor declared a state of emergency and put up barriers all around the Capitol. And yet we actually have people burning buildings and tearing things down and shooting people. No state of emergency.
Nope.
No special fencing going up. None of that.
Nope. The police have been told to stand down. Get out of the way. Don't go in there.
You have to look at this and say, again, what is the real, why would you do that?
Yeah.
And I think that's the question to ask. Why would a governor, if you had the power, why would you declare an emergency on people that are gun owners that cause no harm, and then ignore it when people turn extremely violent and just let it go? Why would you do that?
Yeah, I think it's an assault on property rights, and the Second Amendment being the key way you protect your property rights. Philip, I think, is right at the center square of it. Let's not forget the state of emergency because of a virus that, 0.1% of us will find, what do they call it, a bad outcome for, in all their phrasing.
I'm convinced that there are people especially in government, there are some up there that absolutely want the equivalent of a civil war. They want this. You can't help but see that they're being prodded. It's kind of like what happened there in Charlottesville, where they purposely let people that hated each other mix purposely and told the police to stand down. How could that ever have turned out other than how it did? In fact, it's amazing that only one person got killed.
Well, it's even worse than that. The Virginia State Police were ordered to evacuate the park onto the street where Antifa and Black Lives Matter were. I was there for that, Philip, because the state police said you had to clear the park, and they made them leave not onto the street that was cordoned off specifically for their egress. It was, to get out there with Antifa, mix it up, boys. It was crazy, but I really think that strongman governments need chaos first, so that we'll all say, please just make it stop. Caesar did it. Napoleon did it.
The oldest trick in the book.
Yeah. And I think we're going through it right now. I hope we're smart enough, and with help of you and all of your members at VCDL, we will be. VCDL.org. Philip, best of luck. Good luck with the filings this week, the hearings, and let us know about any new cases that come about. But we're always ready to help keep people on your rolls and keep people informed with what you're doing.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. It's going to be a team effort to save our rights. Amen
to that. Philip Van Cleave, VCDL.org. Coming up next on Freedom and Prosperity Radio, Dr. Josh Umber, founder of Atlas MD, and perhaps some silver linings out of COVID-19 for medical freedom at very least, on Freedom and Prosperity Radio next.